And they have their own lobster. They go out there, every day they're out there catching their own lobster, and they bring the lobster back, and that's what they're serving in their restaurant for a lot. You can't get fresher than that unless you go out there and catch it yourself and eat it raw like Ariel or something. I don't know. I just find it amazing that it doesn't. People are people no matter where you go on the planet, and people don't know what they don't know, but they think they know it all. They really do. Parisians think that they're getting real Southwestern, Midwestern, American food in a restaurant called Indiana that is very badly decorated in so-called Native American decor, which it is really bad. It was bad. Food was good. Service was good. Decor was awful. It was. But they don't know any better. They don't. I guess that's part of the problem with a lot of liberals is maybe they just don't know any better. Now, that's no excuse for them running around foisting a bunch of fake stuff. Frankly, most of their heroes, like Bernie Sanders, they do know better. But that's still, go and find out for yourself. If you really want... Don't get me wrong, if you want to sit in Manhattan and eat Chicago pizza and you're fine with that, that's great. But if you want to know what real Chicago pizza tastes like, you're probably going to have to go to the Chicago area to find out for yourself or somehow get it delivered to you in order to make a comparison, because you don't know what you don't know. You're out there on the West Coast and you want to know what a real New England lobster sandwich tastes like, well, you're going to have to go to New England or get it FedEx to you. You don't know what you don't know. But you should know that you don't know. I don't know how you can sit in San Francisco or out in the Midwest and say that you know what a real lobster sandwich tastes like if you've never been to New England. That's like saying that you know what real Louisiana gumbo tastes like and you've never been to Louisiana. And you don't know anybody who's come from Louisiana who's made you the gumbo. How would you know what it tastes like? Personally, I've never had gumbo. Is that like a shrimp? That's a shrimp from like Muddy Waters, right? I don't know. Don't people have... No, those are... hermit. How can you have a hermit crab? How is a hermit crab a pet? I don't know. I know there are kids and some adults who like hermit crabs as pet. I don't get it. Yeah, that just... Look, you got people out there who are talking about they love the fact that prices are so low. And, at the last segment, I told you that's just a bunch of nonsense. It's stupidity. Ignorance on display about how the economy actually works. And this is how we get class warfare. Because it's really based on jealousy. And that jealousy really drives things like lotteries. Isn't it amazing how everybody hates the rich, but almost everybody wants to be rich? Now, I scratch my head on that because I'm thinking, why the hell would you want to become something that you absolutely hate? Think about that for a second. Now, I'm not accusing Bernie Sanders of being rich because actually I believe his net worth is below. He's not. Bernie is almost the real deal. He's almost the real deal. He knows the real truth, but he doesn't tell his followers the real truth. But he does almost live the way he talks. He's been working in government for more than half his life, so he doesn't really know what it's like to have a real job. But as far as his claims on Washington and state capital corruption and all the money that flows in, and how these people, these elected officials, a lot of them, especially the career ones, they get rich off of jobs that don't pay them nearly the amount that they end up being. Look at Obama. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say it. I'll say it. Obama got rich fairly. I know some people are thinking, did Rod just say that? Well, let me explain. He wrote or had ghostwritten a couple of books that sold a lot. And that's where the bulk of his wealth came from. Now, evidently, he's also, he wasn't worth $1 million when he was elected president. I know that his wife had that $250,000, job at that hospital where she hardly even showed up. What was it, like 300? She was making like $300,000 a year. But that they didn't have, and I know they had that big house that they got a great, a really unrealistic great deal on in a Chicago suburb. But they weren't rich as far as, millionaire status rich. They got rich as he was running for office for his first term and just after he got elected because of his books. I mean, that happens. In order for his books to sell that much, people had to go out and buy them. Now, whether or not you liked his books or agreed with what was said in his books or what have you, it doesn't really matter. If you believe his books were well written or poorly written, it doesn't matter. People bought them. And that's what padded his net worth. And then he was able to, evidently he's not an incompetent investor. And he's been able to, increase his net worth slightly 7 years in office. So I don't disparage them for that. But I do disparage them for talking about wealthy people and them getting the breaks and all that kind of stuff. But they're living the lifestyle of an ultra wealthy person. And this happens with Democrats. I mean, you got Nancy Pelosi that has her own plane, for crying out loud. Then she wanted the American people to pay for it. This woman's net worth and her husband, they're in the billions. Hundreds of millions to billions. I mean, the Valley Girl is not poor, but she's out there disparaging rich people. I mean, are you kidding me? Bernie Sanders is one of the few who isn't, by terms of what most people would define as rich, is not rich. What is Senator, what is 180? That's what Bernie earns. He doesn't have secondary at least he hasn't revealed that he has secondary and tertiary types of income coming in that makes him, earn $500,000 a year or something like that. Most of his income, if we've seen, he roughly earns, him and his wife roughly earn. That's not rich by any stretch of the imagination. It probably goes a long way in Vermont because, Vermont is not, the cost of living in Vermont is not extremely high, especially compared to places like if you just go to Boston, New York City, which, Vermont, striking distances of those two communities. $250,000 in Boston and New York City. But these people, they're out there bashing rich people when they're rich themselves. But they don't include themselves in all this bashing. They try to distance themselves. You got Al Gore running around talking about, it's kind of like Al Gore running around talking about global warming and, all this carbon and all this kind of stuff. When the guy is out there spewing more he's got a larger footprint than some American factories. Do you realize that? If you were to add up what Al Gore does, where he goes, he's got a larger carbon footprint that he's out there touting about and telling everybody else to reduce theirs. He's got a larger carbon footprint than some American factories. And that's pretty sad. It's very hypocritical. But that's the way it works for them. But you people who are following Bernie Sanders, you don't know what you don't know, but you should know that you don't know something and want to go find out. I mean, it's just common sense, and I know common sense is not very common, but it's also just plain logical. Bernie Sanders is out there telling you he wants to break up big banks. Well, do you bank at a big bank? Why do you bank at that big bank? And don't tell me it's the only bank that you look. There are so many banks, and even a small town actually has more than one bank. So don't tell me you don't have a choice. And you can bank online now. You don't even have to go to a real bank, a physical brick and mortar bank now. You can just bank online. So he's out there saying that he wants to break up big banks. Do you bank at one of the banks that Bernie Sanders says is a big bank that needs to be broken up? How do you think that's going to affect you? Well, it's not going to affect you in a positive manner. Trust me. But yet you're supporting. Okay, what if you actually now understand that some of Bernie Sanders' supporters work at banks? Now, if he is targeting your bank to be broken up, how is that going to affect your job? It's going to affect it. Either directly or indirectly, and it's going to affect your pay. But yet, and still, you haven't really found out the consequences of Bernie's actions should you actually get him elected. And this happens a lot. You had people down in Pennsylvania and in other coal-producing states that somehow, when he was out there touting, hey, you can start and build a coal energy plant. You can do that. We'll bankrupt you, but you can still do it. And he's out there saying that he wants to shut down the coal industry, and people in the coal industry voted for him. You're literally shooting yourself in the foot. And then when your mine or your coal-related industry in your town shuts down and it devastates your town, you're like, why is this happening? You got all these people that are shocked. Well, he told you what he wanted to do, but you believe this rhetoric that he was protecting the planet and he was targeting the rich people. And then what happened is that you, who are not rich, got affected the most. It happens time and time and time again. It always happens. Well, we got to stop saying to people, well, you don't know what you don't know. Well, that is true. But you should have the wherewithal, the logical sense to understand what you don't know. Is it logical to believe that you've had real Boston baked beans when you've never been to Boston? And you've never had somebody from Boston make you beans? And yet you think that jar or can in the store that says real authentic Boston baked beans made in, Ohio, that's where Bush's baked beans. And I'm not bashing on any particular company, but I really are, but to say that they're authentic. Oh, if you've never eaten authentic Boston baked beans, these beans are canned in Ohio. Those Parisians think that they're eating real. I think that's kind of stupid. Well, I wanted to know what a French taco tasted like, what a French taco is like. But the Parisians think they're getting real Mexican taco. Trust me, a French taco is not an authentic Mexican taco. Still good, but it's not authentic Mexican. I'm just saying, it's not authentic Southwest. No. But they don't know that. But you would think that they would at least stop to think, well, I wonder what a real taco tastes like. I do all the time. Think about stuff like that. Maybe because I've experienced some of